Yo, what's going on, guys? Hanging Hunt Outdoors here. My name's Dimitri, and in today's video we're going to be continuing on with the most in-depth guide for building the most accurate arrows. This is part 2, which is going to be how to choose an arrow shaft. So, you guys ready? Let's get into it. So, choosing an arrow shaft can be pretty overwhelming now that there are so many options out there. And if I'm being honest with you guys, it really comes down to the application that you plan on using the arrow. If you plan to hunt at all with this set of arrows, I would recommend just sticking with hunting shafts. They're going to have more structural integrity, as well as most companies now anyway make hunting shafts that have the same quality and consistency standards as target shafts do, maybe even better consistency. So yeah, if you plan to hunt at all, stick with the hunting shafts. So for my build, I'm building jack of all trade arrows. I plan to obviously hunt, shoot some occasional 3D and target. So I am going with the Easton Axis long range arrow shafts. I'll get this pulled up for you guys. So these are the Easton Axis long range. These are the 4mm. Now don't let this influence your choice. I just planned on sharing what I'm going to be doing because I'm going to be going along with the arrow build with you guys. If you plan on shooting strictly target or 3D, then I would recommend just going with the target shafts. Since this is a hunting channel, we're going to be going over the hunting shafts first. Now there are different diameters that you can get for a hunting shaft. You have micro diameter and standard diameter. I like to use micro diameter shafts mainly for the math and the physics behind them. They have less surface area, so they experience less wind drift, and they also penetrate more because of that less surface area. There was an experiment done to figure out just how much more the micro diameter arrows penetrated than, like, let's say standard diameter arrows, and a 5mm arrow penetrated 50% more than a standard shaft did, a standard diameter shaft. And a 4mm arrow penetrated 50% more than a 5mm arrow did. It's mind-boggling to me, but I'm just fascinated by it, so that's why I like to stick with the micro-diameter shafts. However, standard diameter shafts penetrate very well if they're built with a decent amount of FOC, which stands for front of center, and you use cut-on contact or fixed blade broadheads, they will penetrate just fine. So if you guys are confused on what FOC means, we'll be going into more detail on that later, but for now we're just going to keep going. Anyway, standard diameter shafts are tried and true. More often than not, they actually have more structural integrity when using the stock like aluminum inserts that they come with, so that's a plus. So now I know what all you guys are thinking. How do you pick one? It really boils down to your budget. Micro diameter arrows tend to be a little bit more expensive than standard diameter arrows. If I were to recommend you guys a good place to start, I would probably start with 5mm arrows. For starters, they have really good penetration. They get your foot in the door with micro diameter arrows, and they have a ton of aftermarket support for inserts and things like that. They're also made by some really great manufacturers like Easton, Black Eagle, Victory, and Gold Tip. My general rule of thumb is to try to find an arrow that weighs the least amount of GPI or grains per inch, that has the straightness tolerances that fits in my budget. So choosing a shaft with a lower GPI or grain per inch, basically what that's going to allow you to do is it's going to give you a lighter overall shaft. So to reach your target weight of your arrow, you actually load the weight up into the point of the arrow, which is going to increase FOC, which stands for front of center. And that's going to help with group sizing, penetration, because the tip of the arrow actually pulls the rest of the arrow through your target. Now keep in mind, we can't get too carried away with this, with adding point weight to the front, because we do have that target arrow weight to consider and to is our goal that we're trying to reach. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why I favor the lighter GPI arrow shafts over the heavier ones. They have a little less structural integrity, but I'd say it's a fair trade-off to have more penetration. Now, a really great starter 5mm arrow that I can recommend to you guys are the Black Eagle Rampage arrows. I believe they're in the 8.4 to 8.7 range. I want to say 8.7. I think I remember seeing 8.7 somewhere. So 8.7 grains per inch, so they're a pretty low GPI. They're on the affordable side, and they have great straightness tolerances. So that's pretty much going to wrap up the how to select a hunting shaft. Now we're going to hop into figuring out how to choose a target shaft. So target shafts actually give you more diameter options. There are micro, standard, and then large diameter shafts, which is kind of cool if you guys have ever seen one. It's basically like a 60 ring cigar flying through the air. There are advantages and disadvantages to either one, obviously. The diameter that you choose is going to be based off of your application. So if you're shooting indoor target, I would go for the fattest possible arrow that you can get with the lowest GPI. Basically, you'll be able to just use more point weight, which gives you higher FOC, which increases your group size. So the reason why I would say get the fattest arrow that you're allowed to use, because a lot of tournaments or whatever you plan on shooting, they may have limits to the arrow size that you can have. So I would check that first before you actually go ahead and buy the fattest arrows that are available. The reason why I say that is because it gives you a greater margin to miss the actual X or X ring while still be able to breaking the line, because it has a larger radius, larger diameter than a standard diameter shaft. However, if you're shooting outdoor target or 3D, I would steer away from the thicker, larger diameter arrows. I would go for the micro diameter arrows. Now, the reason why I say that is because if you're in any sort of windy conditions, a large diameter arrow has way more surface area than a micro diameter shaft would. So that wind is going to push your arrow all over the place. And then, like I was saying, for any application or diameter, I would recommend trying to find the lightest grain per inch arrow possible with the best straightness tolerances that fits in your budget. Again, this allows you to stack weight in the point of the arrow versus it being spread out along the entire length of the arrow. This is going to increase your FOC, and by increasing FOC, you increase group consistency. It can increase group size or decrease group size. I don't know. How would you explain that? Because increasing a group size would technically be a bad thing, but what I mean is that it would increase it by decreasing it, if that makes sense. So now that we know how to choose an arrow shaft depending on application, that's pretty much going to wrap up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys are interested, in the next video we're going to be talking about arrow spine, which is a super important thing when building arrows, because it increases the GPI, as well as it has to be suited properly for your poundage and draw length, and it gets kind of tricky when you add weight to the point of the arrow. So if you guys want some clarity on that, I would definitely stay tuned and get subscribed, because that video will be out shortly. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.